Ascension in the year 1828, as she was on her voyage from Ceylon to England. This vessel, besides a valuable cargo, had on board several passengers, consisting of a major and his wife, an assistant surgeon, two civilians, about 25 invalid soldiers, and 3 or 4 of their wives. As soon as Benito de Soto perceived the ship, which was at daylight on the 21st of February, he called up all hands, and prepared for attacking her. He was at the time steering on an opposite course to that of the Morning Star. On reconnoitring her, he at first supposed she was a French vessel, but Barbazan, one of his crew, who was himself a Frenchman, assured him the ship was British. "So much the better," exclaimed Soto, in English, for he could speak that language. "We shall find the more booty." He then ordered the sails to be squared, and ran before the wind in chase of his plunder, from which he was about 2 leagues distant. The Defensor de Pedro, the name of the pirate ship, was a fast sailer, but owing to the press of canvas which the Morning Star hoisted soon after the pirate had commenced the chase, he did not come up with her so quickly as he had expected. The delay caused great uneasiness to Soto, which he manifested by muttering curses, and restlessness of manner. Sounds of savage satisfaction were to be heard from every mouth, but his at the prospect. He alone expressed his anticipated pleasure by oaths, menaces, and mental inquietude. While Barbazan was employed in superintending the clearing of the decks, the arming and breakfasting of the men, he walked rapidly up and down, revolving in his mind the plan of the approaching attack, and when interrupted by any of the crew, he would run into a volley of imprecations. In one instance, he struck his black boy a violent blow with a telescope, because he had asked him if he would like his morning coffee of chocolate. As soon, however, as he set his studding sails, and perceived that he was gaining on the Morning Star, he became somewhat tranquil, began to eat heartily of cold beef, drank his chocolate at a draught, and coolly sat down on the deck to smoke a cigar. In less than a quarter of an hour, the pirate had gained considerable on the other vessel. Soto now, without raising from where he sat, ordered a gun, with blank cartridge, to be fired, and the British colors to be hoisted; but finding this measure had not the effect of bringing the Morning Star to, he cried out, "Shot the long gun and give it her point blank." The order was obeyed, but the shot fell short of the intention, on which he jumped up and cursed the fellows for bunglers who had fired the gun. He then ordered them to load the canister shot, and took the match in his own hand. He did not, however, fire immediately, but waited until he was nearly abreast of his victim, then directing the aim himself, and ordering a man to stand by the flag to haul it down. Fired with an air that showed he was sure of his mark, he then ran to haul up the Colombian colors, and having done so, cried out through the speaking trumpet, "Lower your boat down this moment, and let your captain come on board with his papers." During this fearful chase, the people on board the Morning Star were in the greatest alarm; but however their apprehensions might have been excited, that courage, which is so characteristic of a British sailor, never for a moment forsook the captain. He boldly carried on sail, and although one of the men fell from a wound, and the ravages of the shot were everywhere around him, he determined not to strike; but unhappily he had not a single gun on board, and no small arms that could render his courage availing. The tears of the women, and the prudent advice of the passengers overcoming his resolution, he permitted himself to be guided by the general opinion. One of the passengers volunteered himself to go on board the pirate, and a boat was lowered for the purpose. Both vessels now lay to within 50 yards of each other, and a strong hope arose in those on board the Morning Star that the gentleman who had volunteered to go to the pirate might, through his exertions, avert at least the worst of the dreaded calamity. Some people here, in their quiet security, had made no scruple of declaring that the commanding officer of the soldiers on board should not have so tamely yielded to the pirate, particularly as he had his wife along with him, and consequently a misfortune to dread, that might be though even worse than death; but all who knew the true state of the circumstances, and reflect upon it, will allow that he adopted the only chance of escaping that which was to be most feared by a husband, The long gun, which was on a pivot in the center of the pirate ship, could in a few shots sink the Morning Star, and even had resistance been made to the pirates as they boarded her, had they been killed or made prisoners, the result would not be much better. It was evident that the Defensor de Pedro was the best sailor; consequently the Morning Star could not hope to escape. In fact, submission or total destruction was the only choice. The commanding officer, therefore, acted for the best when he recommended the former. There was some slight hope of escaping with life, and without personal abuse, by surrendering, but to contend must be inevitable death. The gentleman who had gone in a boat to the pirate returned in a short time, exhibiting every proof of the ill treatment he had received from Soto and his crew. It appears that when the villains learned that he was not the captain, they fell upon and beat him, as well as the sailors along with him, in a most brutal manner, and with the most horrid imprecations told him, that if the captain did not instantly come, on his return to the vessel they would blow the ship out of the water. This report at once decided the captain in the way he was to act. Without hesitation he stepped into the boat, taking with him his second mate, 3 soldiers and a sailor boy, and proceeded to the pirate. On going on board that vessel, along with the mate, Soto, who stood near the mainmast, with his drawn cutlass in his hand, desired him to approach, while the mate was ordered by Barbazan to go to the forecastle. Both these unfortunate individuals obeyed, and were instantly slaughtered. Soto now ordered 6 picked men to descend into the boat, amongst whom was Barbazan. To him the leader addressed his orders, the last of which was, to take care to put all in the prize to death, and then sink her. The 6 pirates, who proceeded to execute his savage demand, were all armed alike. They each carried a brace of pistols, a cutlass, and a long knife. Their dress was composed of a sort of coarse cotton checkered jacket and trousers, shirts that were open at the collar, red woolen caps, and broad canvas waist belts, into which were the pistols and the knives. They were all athletic men, and seemed such as might well be trusted with the sanguinary errand on which they were dispatched. While the boat was conveying them, Soto held in his hand a cutlass, reddened with the blood of the murdered captain, and stood scowling on them with silence, while another ruffian, with a lighted match, stood by the long gun, ready to support the boarding, if necessary, with a shot that would sweep the deck. As the boarders approached the Morning Star, the terror of the females became excessive. They clung to their husbands in despair, who endeavored to allay their fears by their own vain hopes, assuring them that a quiet submission nothing more than the plunder of the vessel was to be apprehended. But a few minutes miserably undeceived them. The pirates rapidly mounted the side, and as they jumped on deck, commenced to cut right and left at all within their reach, uttering at the same time the most dreadful oaths. The females, screaming, hurried to hide themselves below as well as they were able, and the men fell or fled before the pirates, leaving them entire masters of the decks. When the pirates had succeeded in effectively prostrating all the people on the deck, they drove most of them below, and reserved the remainder to assist in their operations. Unless the circumstances be closely examined, it may be wondered how 6 men could have so easily overcome a crew of English seamen supported by about 20 soldiers with a major at their head. But it will not appear so surprising when it is considered that the sailors were altogether unarmed, the soldiers were worn out invalids, and more particularly that the pirate carried a heavy long gun, ready to sink her victim at a shot. Major Logie was fully impressed with the folly of opposing so powerful and desperate an enemy, and therefore advised submission as the only course for the safety of those under his charge, presuming no doubt that something like humanity might be found in the breast even of the worst of men. But alas! he was woefully deceived in his estimate of the villain's nature, and felt, when too late, that even death would have been preferable to the barbarous treatment he was forced to endure. Beaten, bleeding, terrified, the men lay huddled together in the hold, while the pirates proceeded in their work of pillage and brutality. Every trunk was hauled forth, every portable article of value heaped for the plunder,